This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. With Cybersecurity Awareness Month winding down, LifeLock wants to remind you to update your software. These updates will patch up security issues that identity thieves can exploit to gain access to your personal info. For comprehensive identity theft protection, there's LifeLock. LifeLock alerts you to more uses of your personal info and fixes issues that arise. Protect your identity today with a 30-day free trial at lifelock.com/podcast.
Streaming only on Peacock.
Being with Finch felt like I was in some fairy tale.
She's like, I write for Grey's Anatomy. I was like, what?
Her writing was so highly regarded because Finch had been through so much.
A Hollywood writer's life.
When you love somebody, you'll ignore red flags so they're hitting you in the head.
Filled with fiction.
She would do whatever it takes to get ahead.
She's sort of like a TV series.
I don't know who my wife is.
Anatomy of Lies. Streaming October 15th. Only on Peacock.
It was all a lie.
Warning, this documentary contains strong content. Listener discretion is advised. On July 5th, 2011, 11 years before the brutal murders in Moscow, a user named xr.thosewithvisualsnow posted a message on the online forum Tapatalk.
I feel like an organic sack of meat with no self-worth, as I'm starting to view everyone as this. Everything I have ever done makes no sense. How did things get this way? As my family group hugs and celebrates, I am stuck in this void of nothing, feeling completely no emotion, feeling nothing. I feel dirty, like there's dirt inside of my head. My mind, I'm always dizzy and confused.
The user's real name is Bryan Kohberger. When he posted this, he was 16 years old.
He also talked about feeling isolated and detached from society.
This is Reuben Appelman, who has written a book about this case, and he guides us.
About his parents not knowing the real him and how he sees human beings as bags of meat in some way, that we're just bodies wearing shirts, he says. How did I end up here in this shirt?
As I hug my family, I look into their faces. I see nothing. It is like I am looking at a video game, but less. I feel less than mentally damaged. It is like I have severe brain damage. I am stuck in the depths of my mind, where I have to constantly battle my demons. Am I here or am I fake? I feel myself slipping away. I hear screams faintly, but I constantly battle away from it. What if I let go? Where would I be? I can't talk without flinching now. I try to sleep, I try to clear my head, but the pressure won't go away, the pain and depression won't leave. Being me is this horrible disease that I was given.
And so he clearly comes with a lot of struggle internally.
11 and a half years later, Bryan Kohberger is arrested, suspected of the murders of Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. His DNA was found on the sheath left behind in Maddie's room. You're listening to The Idaho Student Murders, a documentary about the brutal murders of Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. This documentary is produced by Gabriella Lahti. I'm your host, Jonathan Rollins. And if you like this series, follow our feed, Crime by PodLit, so you'll know when new episodes are released and can find our other series. This is the fourth and final chapter, Bryan Kohberger. Bryan Kohberger was born on November 21st, 1994. He is the youngest of 3 siblings, with 2 older sisters. The siblings grew up with their parents in the Poconos region of eastern Pennsylvania, about a 2-hour drive from New York City. The Poconos is a scenic area known for lush forests, rolling hills, and numerous lakes. However, despite the beautiful nature, there are also areas marked by poverty and socioeconomic problems, including drug use. The opioid crisis has impacted and contributed to increased drug abuse, social issues, and higher levels of poverty and crime in certain areas. Bryan's parents, Michael and Marianne, Both worked in education when he was growing up. Michael as a maintenance worker and Marianne as a teacher. Stable jobs, but not very well paid. The family struggled financially.
Growing up, he was extremely awkward.
Bryan was an odd student in school, not like everyone else, and it became even more noticeable when he reached middle school.
He was known as what young women tend to call cringy. He gave them, quote, bad vibes. He struggled with interpersonal relationships. He had very few friends growing up and continued to have very few friends, although it's obvious that he tries.
During his teenage years, Bryan was often active on a discussion forum, Original Visual Snow, or Static Forum, where people with a condition known as visual snow could share their experiences and support each other. Bryan wrote several posts about how his life was negatively affected by visual snow, a neurological condition where a person experiences a constant, fine-grained static or spots in their visual field. People with visual snow might see colorful dots moving or so-called after images, like ghostly echoes of objects.
If you can imagine what it's like to look through glasses that are smudged and how annoying that is and how distracting it is, it appears that Bryan Kohberger struggles with that on a daily basis through his regular vision.
The condition can occur suddenly and has significant consequences for many in terms of quality of life. Visual snow can be linked to other symptoms such as tinnitus, anxiety, depression, sleep problems, and dissociative episodes where the world doesn't feel real. There's no known cure for visual snow, so many people with the condition are constantly searching for new ways to manage their symptoms.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. With Cybersecurity Awareness Month winding down, LifeLock wants to remind you to update your software. These updates will patch up security issues that identity thieves can exploit to gain access to your personal info. For comprehensive identity theft protection, there's LifeLock. LifeLock alerts you to more uses of your personal info and fixes issues that arise. Protect your identity today with a 30-day free trial at lifelock.com/podcast.
Bryan wrote that he had visual snow since he was 14 and that it had changed him, primarily due to the anxiety and feelings of unreality and hopelessness.
I have these thoughts all in my head. I search for someone to relate to me. Everyone looks down upon me. No one can relate. When I feel slightly calm, it gets hard to breathe, and I see bright dots in my vision. Nothing I do is enjoyable. I am blank. I have no opinion. I have no emotion. I have nothing. Can you relate?
In September of 2011, he posted a song he made himself on SoundCloud. He raps,
always the same thing that disrupts my life. Wonder when I'll change. I guess when the time is right. Procrastinating my deranged to change would be a fight. So I'm pacifist, like I'm afraid.
Always the same thing that disrupts my life. Wondering when I'll change. I guess when the time is right. Procrastinating my deranged to change would be a fight. So I'm pacifist, like I'm afraid to get a bloody fist.
On December 20th, 2011, he posted,
I've had this for over 2 years, and I have it bad in every single way. Not one night have I slept normal since, and I feel like I am trapped here. I am desensitized in every way now. People say these are supposed to be the years I enjoy and cherish. Well, I can't say I will cherish these days.
You are not my equal, you are evil, but I'm feeble, and now I'm going regal. Don't fuck with us if you learn a lesson.
Through Bryan's posts, you can follow his journey with mental illness. We already know that he expressed hopelessness about life on the forum.
I always feel as if I am not there, completely depersonalized. Mentally, I experience fog, lack of comprehension at sometimes, feel like my life is a movie. Depression, no interest in activity, constant thought of suicide, crazy thoughts, delusions of grandeur, anxiety, poor self-image, poor social skills, no emotion. I feel like nothing has a point to it. When I get home, I am mean to my family. This started when visual snow did. I felt no emotion, And along with the depersonalization, I can say and do whatever I want with little remorse. Everyone hates me, pretty much. I am an asshole.
But there are also glimmers of hope. Thanks to a new diet and lots of exercise, he experiences a reduction in symptoms, he writes in a post. A discussion that often comes up on the forum is whether one can get rid of VS symptoms by simply not caring about them. The idea is that the less energy spent on the condition, the less power it has. On February 20th, 2012, a 17-year-old Bryan writes his last post.
I've just accepted my visual snow finally. I don't even feel the need to stay away from the forum. It doesn't scare me anymore. Anyone else come to terms? I feel like coming to terms could be a bad thing, though.
Towards the end of high school, there's a dramatic change in Bryan's appearance. He loses a significant amount of weight.
By running and kickboxing and dieting, but then took to heroin.
Bryan, living in an area where heroin was the most common illegal substance at the time, becomes addicted. And this leads to a change in his personality.
He went through many swings in physicality, in mood, in life, and he loathed the people around him, and he showed that loathing through arrogance.
Bryan's mental health issues, combined with social difficulties, and now also affected by drugs, cause his mood to become a roller coaster. Bryan is perceived as arrogant. He seems to hate everyone. Friends start to distance themselves.
The friends that Bryan Kohberger kept seem to be dedicated to him because they know his struggles. And the friends that he lost, it seems that he lost them because they didn't care about his struggles and they're only interested in how he treated them, which is not so great, according to them.
Despite treating his friends poorly, a few stay by his side, while the rest refuse to accept his behavior. But when things are at their worst, there's a sudden turnaround. Bryan checks into rehab.
He fought that drug addiction and came out of it.
He graduates high school in 2013, is hired as a security guard by the school district in 2016, and also studies psychology courses at Northampton Community College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Bryan then shifts focus and begins studying criminology at DeSales University, a private Catholic university near his parents' home. He earns his master's degree in June of 2022 and moves across the country to Pullman, Washington. He starts his PhD in criminal justice and works as a teaching assistant at Washington State University. But then new problems arise. Bryan's students are not impressed with him.
Bryan Kohberger is quite grumpy seeming to his students. He is easily agitated. He's a hard grader. He is rude, according to his students. He is unfair, according to his students. He is distracted, according to his students. And he is a poor teacher, according to his students.
His female students react to how he talks down to them, how he's unfair, and how he gives them lower grades. One of his students says that he followed her when she was on her way to her car.
He is reprimanded multiple times by the university that he works at for making women uncomfortable.
Bryan also gets into conflicts with the professor he was hired to assist, and despite several formal warnings from the university's administration, it seems difficult for Bryan to change his behavior. Finally, Bryan is informed that his work is not meeting expectations and that he has violated established guidelines for professional conduct. An improvement plan is created, which Bryan agrees to work on.
I think you know why I stopped you. You ran the red light.
What actually happened was I was stuck in the middle of the intersection.
Yeah,
so
I was behind you the whole time.
On October 14th at 4:30 p.m., Bryan is stopped after running a red light at an intersection. The entire incident can be seen on the police body cam. The afternoon sun casts an orange light over Bryan's white car. He is parked in a lot right outside of Washington State University, where he studies and teaches. The officer approaches the driver's seat, where the window is rolled down. Inside sits Bryan, wearing a bright blue shirt. He looks freshly shaven.
Yeah. So technically you're not supposed to enter the intersection at all for that reason, because if the light turns red, then you're stuck in the intersection, and then you're on the red light. So, do you have your license on you?
Bryan hands over his driver's license. The body cam footage shows that his documents need to be renewed in a month.
Yeah, where I'm from Pennsylvania, we actually don't have, like, crosswalks.
Oh.
Yep.
Bryan explains that he's from a rural area in Pennsylvania where there aren't any crosswalks. But there you have to turn if you get stuck in an intersection.
Yeah, so I know laws vary state to state, but there is a law in Washington for blocking an intersection like that.
I'm just curious about the law. I don't mean to...
Oh, no, yeah, I can find it for you. Yeah.
The officer takes Bryan's documents back to his car and spends the next 3 minutes calling in to check Bryan's license with the communications center.
Go ahead. Kohberger, King, Ocean, Henry, Boy, Edward, Robert, George, Edward, Robert.
And looks up a cheat sheet on state traffic violations. Bryan's license gets the green light, and the officer returns to the white Hyundai Elantra.
So it's RCW 46.61.202, so it's no driver shall enter an intersection unless there is significant space on the other side of the intersection.
The officer explains that Bryan won't get a ticket this time, but asks him to remember the rules for the next time he's in a similar situation.
Yeah, I do apologize if I was asking you too many questions about the law. I wasn't trying to, like...
No, not at all. Like, I understand you're not from here, so... If you don't, a lot of people don't know a bunch of laws. Like, I only know it because this is what I do, but...
Bryan nods and seems to appreciate the officer's understanding. He gets information on where to learn more about the different traffic laws.
They can be hard to read because it's in, like, legal language, but hope that helps.
Bryan doesn't mention that legal texts aren't difficult for him to read since he both studies and teaches criminal justice at the university right next to them. He and the officer wish each other a good day, and Bryan drives away. The officer is left to continue believing that there are no crosswalks in certain areas of Pennsylvania. It's November 13th, 2022. Based on the data collected from cell towers that show where Bryan's phone was and when, we know that at 2:45 a.m. on November 13th, the white Hyundai Elantra leaves the apartment complex where Bryan lives. At 2:47, Bryan's phone pings a tower south in Pullman, the same direction you drive out of town. Shortly thereafter, his phone is turned off. At 3:30, the car drives into Moscow and passes a police officer who has just stopped some guys with beer cans in hand.
Hey, is that beer? Is that beer in your hand? Yeah, I'm 21. You got your ID on you?
The police body cam records as the white car drives past in the background, heading towards 1122 King Road. An hour later, Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan are dead. At 4:20, the car is caught on a neighbor's surveillance camera. The car leaves the scene in a hurry. The phone doesn't reconnect to the network until 4:48, south of Moscow. At 5:30, the phone is back at Bryan's student apartment. But just a few hours later, at 9:15 in the morning, the white car is back at the crime scene.
In the morning after the murders, the white Hyundai Elantra was shown on neighborhood cameras again to reappear in daylight and circle a specific area.
What is the purpose of this risky return visit?
It's as if the perpetrator of the crimes got home, realized the sheath was missing, not knowing why or how, and was trying to figure out where it had been lost and recover it.
Shortly after the murders at 1122 King Road, Bryan's students notice a shift in his usually grumpy demeanor.
After the murders in nearby Moscow, his whole demeanor changes.
Although he seems tired, he's cheerful and talkative.
While he looks a little haggard and unshaven, which is uncommon for him, he is also a much easier grader.
He starts giving everyone top grades, but it seems like he hasn't even read through what he's grading.
He has a little pep in his step after the murders.
And it's around this time that the Moscow police become interested in him.
Police become very interested in Bryan Kohberger as their number one suspect. Meanwhile, his father flies out from Pennsylvania to Washington State University in order to assist Bryan Kohberger in driving home for the Christmas holiday.
On December 12th, father and son Kohberger get into the white Hyundai Elantra and begin their cross-country journey from Washington to Pennsylvania. When they drive through Indiana on December 15th, the car is stopped twice within 9 minutes for following too closely.
So he's right up on that van, man. He was right up on the back end of that van.
As you can hear, the audio from the police body cam isn't great. But the first time they're stopped, Bryan's father explains that they're on their way from Washington State University to Pennsylvania.
Okay, I'm having a hard time hearing you because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University? Yeah. And you're going where?
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
The officer lets them go with a warning.
So do me a favor, don't follow too close, okay?
No tickets are issued the second time they're stopped either. And despite how strange it might seem to be stopped twice in such a short time, and considering the alert about a white Hyundai Elantra, these were just traffic stops, not related to the murder investigation. The Moscow police are already keeping a close eye on Bryan in ways that aren't obvious.
Officially, there are no suspects, but unofficially, as Bryan Kohberger drives home from Washington State, the police are keeping tabs on him.
On December 16th, when father and son Kohberger arrive in Pennsylvania, surveillance of the family home begins. And as we know from before, surveillance of the family's household trash. The same trash the FBI will collect DNA samples from at the end of December.
Police now have the exclamation point to their lead with Bryan Kohberger, which is...
In summary, Moscow police know the following. There was DNA found on the knife sheath at the crime scene. The DNA taken from the Kohberger trash belongs to the father of that knife sheath DNA. And the DNA from the trash belongs to Bryan's father, whose only son is Bryan.
And the Hyundai Elantra that Bryan Kohberger drives matches the Hyundai Elantra seen in the neighborhood.
It's the day before New Year's Eve, December 30th. It's 1:30 a.m., but Bryan is wide awake. Dressed in shorts, a t-shirt, and latex gloves, he stands in his parents' kitchen, sorting the family's trash. The trash that belongs to him is placed in separate Ziploc bags.
He is either concealing evidence or he's obsessive-compulsive, which he is known to be as well.
Then the police break in.
They arrest Bryan Kohberger. He's shuttled into custody.
Bryan is handcuffed in front of his shocked parents. He's then taken to Monroe County Jail in Pennsylvania. The police begin searching the house, seizing several guns, knives, black clothing, black gloves, black masks, and latex gloves. From Bryan's white Hyundai Elantra, the police take out a shovel, gloves, boots, safety goggles, the car seats, a door panel, and the brake and gas pedals. From his student apartment, they confiscate hair samples, a black disposable glove, and samples from a reddish-brown stain on a pillow. On January 4th, Bryan is transferred to Lahti County Jail in Idaho.
And remains in jail at this time, awaiting trial.
Bryan Kohberger is charged with 4 counts of murder and burglary. He pleads not guilty. The trial date keeps getting postponed for various reasons, including disagreements between the prosecutors and defense over where the trial should be held, what evidence should be included, or which experts should testify. The tentative trial date is currently set for June of 2025. The prosecution is seeking the death penalty, something that hasn't been carried out in Idaho since 2012. No motive has been presented yet, but Jay doesn't think it will make much difference.
There is enough evidence to put Bryan Kohberger away. He will probably get life in prison, if not the death penalty.
Idaho has long used lethal injection as the primary execution method, but starting in 2024, Idaho will use firing squad as an alternative to lethal injection. A firing squad involves a group of officers simultaneously shooting at the condemned person.
If he gets the death penalty, he will probably not get the firing squad because there will be too many eyeballs on this case for the state of Idaho to handle the political repercussions of that. But he will, if convicted, likely get the death penalty in this state, which is a very conservative state, very tough on crime state, very police-friendly state, very military-friendly state, very right and wrong type of state. There's not much gray area in the state of Idaho. If Bryan Kohberger is convicted, he will likely get the death penalty in this state.
It's a sunny Wednesday afternoon, August 21st, 2024. 2 days ago, the fall semester began at the University of Idaho, and the small town of Moscow has once again come to life. This afternoon, both old and new students have gathered for the inauguration of the university's new memorial site, the Healing Garden. The garden, created by students from U of I, honors the memory of Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, as well as other students the university has lost. One of Ethan's good friends, who has been part of the garden project, Drew Giacomazzi, steps up to the podium. He remembers November 13th, 2022.
What happened on this date left family, friends, and the university scarred. During this time, the university felt dark, cold, and distant from one another.
He explains that the university felt dark, cold, and distant after the murders. The purpose of the memorial site is to unite the university's students and the Moscow community, a place to gather in times of grief and reflection.
Do more of what you love to honor Kaylee. Spread that love with random acts of kindness for Maddie. Be silly and do something spontaneous and fun to honor Xana. And tell stories with an abundance of laughter to live life like Ethan.
And that was the Idaho Student Murders. This series is produced by Gabriella, Lahti. Sound design and final mix by Jens Nielsen and Tomas Rajnai. And I'm your host, Jonathan Rollins. Executive producer is Tove, Friman, Leffler. And if you like this series, don't forget to follow Crime by PodLit, where you can find our other podcasts. The clips you heard in this episode are from the YouTube channels University of Idaho, Law and Crime Network, and the music service SoundCloud. Thanks for listening.